We are recording.
Okay, so I'm going to start by saying good morning to some people, good afternoon to other people, good evening probably. I know for sure some people who are participating today, it's evening for them. And for anyone who is joining at some point over the next 12 months, as we know people often do, they watch this webinar online at various points during the year. Hello to you too, whatever time of the year or time of day it might be. So this is our annual Theater Management and Producing webinar Q&A, and we're happy to be with you today. I'm going to start by saying that this has been a very strange year. We shifted online, as most of the world did, or a lot of the world did, last March. This fall, we've been in sort of an online/hybrid situation with some students in person in a classroom and others online, and some classes entirely online. And now we're doing this Q&A for admissions and really thinking about the fall of 2021. Everything is up in the air. But based upon the information that we have in terms of both the industry and Columbia, our assumption at the moment is that things will be slowly opening up as of next fall, that we will be able to meet together, and that our production activity on campus, collaboration activity on campus, and the industry in New York City will slowly be reopening at that point. So we're kind of looking at next fall as a restart of our regularly scheduled programming. My name is Stephen Chakelson. I'm a professor here at Columbia, and I'm the concentration director for the MFA in Theater Management and Producing. I teach a class at Columbia Law School, which the theater managers and producers take while they're in the program. And I also teach a producing course in the undergraduate theater program here at Columbia and Barnard. And in my spare time, I have my production company, management and production company, Snug Harbor Productions, and I provide general management services, and I produce shows on Broadway, off Broadway, around the country, and occasionally in London and around the world. And I'm joined by...
Hi, I'm Victoria or Tori Bailey. I'm an adjunct professor. I'm a concentration advisor for the management and producing program. I also am the executive director at an organization called Theater Development Fund, TDF, which is a performing arts service organization whose mission is to provide access to the performing arts for everyone who wants it. We have a variety of programs, education programs, community engagement programs, accessibility programs, and our membership program, as well as perhaps our most well-known program, which is the TKTS booth in Times Square. So that's what I do. I do my Columbia work, I do my TDF work, and it keeps me pretty busy. So it's delightful to be here, and it's actually, to echo Stephen, it's really nice to be thinking about next year. This year has certainly had its challenges, and I'm sure next year we'll continue to have them, but it's nice to be thinking about moving towards the way being able to be in person more or less. So it's exciting to be able to be here today and share with you what the program looks like.
And we are joined by, Julie, I'm going to make you introduce yourself.
I will introduce myself. My name is Julie Dobrow. I am the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at the School of the Arts. I am also a proud alum of the Theater Management and Producing concentration. So I am particularly happy to be in on this call along with all of you. So thank you so much for being here this morning. Morning, afternoon, evening.
And Stephen's coming to you from campus. Is that right, Stephen?
Yes, I am. I'm in Dodge Hall, in my office in Dodge Hall, so just steps away from the two classrooms that are kind of like homeroom for the theater management and producing students.
And I'm coming to you from Brooklyn, New York.
New Jersey.
New Jersey. So there we are. Brooklyn is the home of the Canarsie and Lenape peoples. For those of you who are interested, I think that acknowledgement is important. So here we go.
Yes, and in a way, the first theater makers in the New York area.
Right. Absolutely.
To their religious ceremonies in what they called the Big House, where they did a 12-day religious ceremony that was kind of theater in the round. So that's an important acknowledgement. What we're going to do is we're going to chat about with each other and banter a bit for the next little while and talk about various aspects of the program and our intersection with the industry. And then at the end, we'll open things up for questions. Julie is here to answer any questions about admissions and financial aid specifically. And so we'll get things started. That's Dodge Hall. That's where I am right now, though it doesn't quite look like that. There is snow and ice everywhere at the moment. I'd like to start by kind of focusing in on where we are in this world of Columbia, because as managers and producers, we're generally very interested in organizational structure. And so to sort of think about Columbia University as a whole, Columbia University as a whole has a lot of different departments and a lot of different schools. The School of the Arts at Columbia is a school like the law school, like the business school, like the journalism school, and it is also a department of the arts, like the economics department or the history department or the political science department. So we kind of live in two worlds at Columbia, and in various ways, the School of the Arts, are involved with both, or our focus is our graduate education, but we're also very much involved, depending upon the particular discipline, in undergraduate life at the university as well, and undergraduate teaching. The School of the Arts has 4 divisions: film, theater, writing, and visual arts. Each of those divisions has a home in Dodge Hall, and then each of us also has various homes around this Morningside Heights and Manhattanville area, kind of ranging from about 110th Street all the way up to 133rd Street on Broadway and on some of the side streets. You might be wondering, oh, it's a School of the Arts, where's music? Music at Columbia is actually its own school, but it just so happens that the School of Music is also located here in Dodge Hall and elsewhere in the neighborhood. If we then focus in on the theater program, the theater division itself, our long-standing name is the Oscar Hammerstein II Center for Theater Studies, but we call ourselves the theater division or theater program at School of the Arts. We offer 6 MFAs, 6 different concentrations: acting, directing, dramaturgy, playwriting, stage management, and theater management and producing. And then we also offer a joint dual degree program with Columbia Law School, and that's specifically for theater management and producing students. It's our joint JD MFA, and I'll talk a little more about that later. I think one thing that's just interesting to say about having all these MFA degrees and concentrations located within the one overall theater program is that's one of the things that sets us apart from certain other programs around the country. The fact that even though students in each concentration are focusing in their particular discipline, we're very much collaboration based, and we provide opportunities for interaction with students from the various disciplines, and that's an important part of our overall philosophy. I think for this webinar and for anybody who's thinking about going to graduate school, one of the first things you should be asking yourself is, why bother with an MFA? Do you need to have an MFA? And my standard answer to that is no, you don't need an MFA. I think there are plenty of people who are successful in our industry who do not have a graduate degree.
I'm one of them.
There you go. And people work their way up little by little through in the industry, in some cases at one company. In other cases, they might move laterally and shift from company to company or trying different areas of the industry. And going back to school for a graduate degree and getting an MFA isn't for everyone. But if you are considering an MFA, I think there are a number of things that you should be looking for and that that can be advantageous. And one of which is the ability to, both take a look at the real big picture of the industry, as well as in-depth study of particular aspects of the industry. It's the kind of thing you really don't have the opportunity to do when you're in a working environment.
That's right. And the big picture, I think, gets bigger and bigger every year, right? I mean, I think that's one of the things that's important to think about when you think about whether you should go to school, go to graduate school, is that I think the industry is becoming more and more complex, more multifaceted. And I think that I think it's going to be a fascinating time to be watching the industry and taking a macro view, because we're going to be, there's going to be a period of recovery and reinvention that's going to happen over the next 3 to 4 years. So the big picture is going to be constantly changing.
And when you're in a particular theater company or in a particular office, you're getting a real focused look at that particular area of the industry, that particular function, and you're becoming an expert in that way. The problem is that you don't necessarily get a view of what other people are doing in other offices and in other parts of the business. And the people who are working and making the shows happen or supporting production or the theaters in various ways don't necessarily have time from day to day to stop and explain every little thing. What's the history? Why are we doing this? How does this fit into the bigger picture of making theater? So again, some people like to learn by doing, and that's really their best for them. Others kind of want to get a more holistic view. And if that's you, and if you really want to broaden your scope, then a graduate study could be right for you. Obviously, it's about expanding your toolkit, a much broader foundation, and a lot of skills building. We particularly focus on skills in the first year of the program. The fact that you have an opportunity to sort of build a network. You have colleagues, classmates in your particular class, in other years in the program, in other concentrations. So there's the community that you have at Columbia. There's the networking with faculty, with guest lecturers, with people at your various internships and job experiences. And so I like to think that one of the things an MFA should do is be both a training ground for building a network, as well as an opportunity to build a network and really expand that, which is something that can last you for your entire career. An MFA is also what's considered a terminal degree. So if you're someone who thinks that teaching might be right for you in the long term, an MFA can do that for you in the same way that a PhD can. And we actually have a number of our alumni who are teaching at various institutions around the country. And finally, I like to think that that we inspire the students, and that the students inspire us, and that over the course of study, you wind up discovering things about yourself and discovering things about the industry, things that work well, things that don't work well, how to make change. So that thinking is an important part of the education as well.
I would say that the education is really, it is as much about thinking, and it is as much about sharing ideas and inspiration and new ways of doing things as it is about tools. It's really about both of those things, and they go hand in hand. And you have to have the foundational stuff, which then allows you to have the aspirational stuff.
And these 9 students did not actually win those Tony Awards, but every year, one of the
Stephen, yet is the word.
Yet. One of the things that our students do every year in the second year, except for a year like this where everything is shut down, is a visit to the Schubert Archive and posing with the Tony Awards at the Schubert organization. The Schubert Archive is an important part of that visit. Oops. Okay, so just some basics about the program and the program requirements. We generally admit 8 to 10 students per year. It's a 3-year program. The first 2 years of the program are considered full-time, and full-time means, generally speaking, at least 15 credits per semester. And that's, so for the first 2 years, 4 semesters, fall and spring of the first year, and fall and spring of the second year. 15 credits works out to, depending upon the particular semester, roughly 10 to 15 hours of actual classwork per week, sometimes a little bit more. And then, of course, there's all the work you have to do on top of that just to prep for class and to do homework and projects and things. So that's the basics of the first 2 years. There are also possibilities we build into the course schedule, the opportunity to take electives, and we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. As I mentioned before, collaboration is an important part of this program, the opportunity to practice here in the Columbia environment. And so one of the requirements of being in the program is producing or managing at least one production, as I like to say, with Columbia content. And that means we're not going to assign you to a particular project and say, you must work on this one, regardless of how you feel about the work that the particular show or the particular people involved. We want you to be proactive, and we want you to seek out other artists in the program and figure out who you want to work with and what type of art you want to work on. So we require that you do, that you're involved with one production. There's constant production year round under normal circumstances. And that includes productions on our main stage that are part of the 3rd year thesis season. And then we also have 1st and 2nd year productions happening year round in some of our smaller spaces. So working on those, you have to do at least one. What winds up happening for most people in the program is as soon as you work on one, people are after you to work on more because the managers and producers are very much in demand with the students in the other concentrations. So the requirement is that you do one, and the hope is that you wind up doing a lot more. And what's really fulfilling is when we see these collaborations and these relationships that start and are built at Columbia extending out into the real world and seeing our alumni collaborating in the professional world. Also part of collaboration is from the get-go, our collaboration weekend, which is really a part of orientation where everybody works together, all the disciplines work together over a 3 to 4 day period to essentially create a show that they then present for all the other students and faculty, and is just part of our welcome to Columbia at the very beginning of the fall semester. You have to do 3 internships, and we put internships in quotation marks. What we mean is experiences in the working world. So unpaid or paid internships, apprenticeships, observerships, fellowships, actual part-time or full-time jobs, all of that can count. Generally speaking, students may consider doing part-time internships during the semester in the first 2 years. And there's usually somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 hours per week that you're able to devote to that. A lot of people choose not to do an internship during the first 2 semesters and do their first internship full-time in the summer. So full-time in the summer, part-time during the school year, and then also potentially full-time in the third year. In fact, some people wind up working, or most people actually wind up working full-time in the third year while they're writing their thesis. And for some people, that actually counts as their third internship, that full-time job.
Yeah, it depends in part on what kind of internship you're interested in doing, because some internships really lend themselves to a kind of full-time situation, and other internships are more suited for doing 15 to 20 hours a week. So Stephen and I really work with you to figure out what are the things you want to do, which helps determine when you're going to do it.
And there are some offices and general managers' offices, producing offices, theater companies that really focus on and are pretty much exclusively full-time experiences, and others that are really geared, like their programming for interns is specifically for part-time interns. So it depends in part on your interest, what area you're looking at, and the particular company you might be interested in working with. Another part of sort of the collaboration aspect of the program is a crew assignment. All first-year MFA students in the theater program need to do a crew assignment, in part because of the nature of the way the undergraduate program intersects, or in some ways doesn't intersect, with the graduate program here at Columbia. We are not like a lot of other graduate schools where we have an undergraduate program servicing and supporting the graduate work. We're separate in that way. So we pay it forward. As a first-year student, just about everybody works on a load in and a load out, and has some sort of crew assignment. For the theater managers and producing students, it's often a company management assignment, which then leads you to a more senior general management or producing assignment down the line, or general management or producing role down the line. But there are some students who come into the program having never been on a crew. And when we learn that, we will often encourage that person to actually request a running crew assignment, right? Run a light board, work backstage doing props, work in wardrobe, because I think an important part of the education as you're sort of growing and building your skills in the industry is having an opportunity to do all different kinds of jobs and really learning the industry from the inside out. There are a lot of free tickets provided to us for productions all around the city: Broadway, off-Broadway, off-Broadway, theater, dance, music. And so our students wind up seeing a lot of theater. And then finally, there's our thesis requirement, which I mentioned a little earlier. The thesis, we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly, but it's essentially a research and position paper that you write in the third year in the program. So while the first 2 years are full-time in class, the third year there are no classes. You're pretty much focused on research and writing of your thesis, and most students are working as well. This is just a slide that will that lists all our current faculty members, and they come from all across the industry. And one of the features of our program is that they are working professionals. So I'm just leaving this slide here for a second for anybody who eventually winds up watching this, this webinar and wants to take a look at the list. If you look at it more closely, and in some cases, you might even need to look up the names of some of these organizations. What's listed here is a combination of either where people work or what their roles are, if they're someone who moves from project to project. And what you would see is it ranges from general management offices to commercial theater owners, to service organizations, to not-for-profit theater companies, to law firms and accounting firms and ad agencies and marketing agencies. So it really is a wide range. People are teaching what they know. People are teaching in this program what they do from day to day in the industry.
And this is an organic list, right? I mean, I think one of the things we do a good job at, I think, is making sure that the offerings that we're doing and the folks that are teaching represent folks who are doing really frontline work in the industry.
So that was the faculty. In terms of the students, we're looking for diverse backgrounds and experiences, and that's diversity in all senses of the word. And in terms of international, which is one big feature of Columbia and New York City, Columbia University in and of itself has one of the largest international student populations of universities around the country. 28% of the student body in the School of the Arts is international. And in the theater management and producing program, and I change this number from year to year, from webinar to webinar, we're currently 35%. The program ranges from about a third to half of students in the program being international. Though no matter where you come from, Columbia is in New York City, and it's really hard to separate the university and especially our program from theater in New York City, in part because we have classes all around New York City. So every semester you will likely have 1 or 2 classes on campus, and you will also have classes in theaters, in offices, in the theater district, downtown, in Midtown, all over the place. And our faculty really host you in their offices, in their theaters. And that's really part of the integration into the theater community from the very first moment that you set foot in the program. We are not a program that sort of separates you from the real world and then 2 or 3 years later throws you back in. You are highly integrated. We assume that most people coming into the program have already been in the industry in one way or another, and we don't pull you out. We keep you integrated and in fact enhance that involvement. And then of course, as I mentioned, going to see the theater is really important. And also, since we're in New York City, we have a wide array of guest speakers who we're able to bring in to the various class sessions. And now that Zoom has become a big part of our lives, we're also tapping into, and I think this will continue, tapping into people around the world. We actually just a couple of weeks ago, I think, had a Zoom session with Julian Bird, who runs the Society of London Theatre, talking about the struggles to reopen on the West End and around the UK. So I believe in balance. So there's a lot about our program where I think we strive for balance in various ways. One important aspect of the program is that we believe it is highly individualized. What does that mean? There are required courses. There are requirements that you have to complete in order to graduate. I just ran through those basics. But within and around those requirements, there's enormous opportunity to individualize the curriculum, whether that's through the electives that you take, the particular projects you choose to work on, and how many projects you choose to do at Columbia, where you choose to have your internship experiences, the shows you choose to see, the research you choose to do over the course of the first 2 years, and especially as part of your thesis. All of those are ways that we can individualize the program for.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that in any given year, No, out of 10 students, nobody's experience is identical, either in terms of your coursework, in terms of your internships, in terms of what you decide to write your thesis about. It really is that there are core classes you have to take because they're fundamentals that we think everybody needs to understand. But beyond that, there are electives, and even what you choose to take from your core classes will vary significantly depending on what it is you're interested in. So a core class, for instance, may require a paper, but the topics for those papers will be widely different depending on what it is you're interested in. Everybody's taking the same class, but they're writing 10 really different papers, for instance.
So, there are programs, MFA programs, great MFA programs, where everybody does the same program, more or less, or at least for the bulk of the time, everybody does the same program. We don't believe in that in a sort of mandated approach, strict mandated approach in that way. And we intentionally keep the program small so that we can advise the students and are available to the students to speak to them. And especially as your ideas change, we might need to sort of shift direction for you in the program to match your changing goals. We are a program that balances, equally weights the commercial and not-for-profit or subsidized, as they would say in the UK, sides of the industry. That's something that's unique about our program. The majority of the MFA programs around the country are very much not-for-profit focused. We balance commercial and not-for-profit. We also balance management and producing. In our very early days, when this program was first founded back in the 1980s, this was an MFA in theater management. And we evolved to become theater management and producing. So on the one hand, the management and administrative aspects of the industry, and on the other hand, the producing and entrepreneurial aspects of the industry. We believe on the one hand in building foundational skills, and on the other hand, thinking deeply and tackling major industry issues and working toward change in the industry. And we feel that the best way to set yourself up for a long and successful career in the industry is by learning the history, by looking at current best practices, and by thinking about what's to come, what's going to be coming down the pike. And then one of our more recent focuses is international. We are based in New York City. There's a lot about our program that is about New York City, and yet we also embrace theater nationally and the performing arts internationally as well. Our program hits a number of different areas of study, and so different classes fit into different categories. Some of them actually hit 2 or more areas. A particular course could be focused on one particular area or could straddle multiple ones. They are accounting and finance, budgeting, contracts, creative development, which happens more in the second year, equity, diversity, and inclusion, fundraising and development, the history and theory of theater, aspects of international production, labor relations, management and administration, and marketing and audience development. And this is just a snapshot of what the current curriculum is in terms of the first year and the second year. And I'm going to leave this slide up while we talk about our newest courses. Over the past year or so, we've created 3 new courses, one which came online last spring, another which came online for the first time this fall, and the newest one that Tori's co-teaching, which comes online in spring of 2020.
January 11th will be the first preview performance.
And
actually, January 15th.
I think what this illustrates is we are constantly, every single year, and in fact, in some cases, every semester, looking at the program and seeing how can we make it better? how should it change to respond to changes in the world and in the industry? So last spring, we've been working for a while on developing a new course that would focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which had been a component of other classes, but wasn't a standalone course. So that was created, and we started that last spring. It's taught by Donna Walker-Kuhn, who has a long-standing relationship with the MFA program, and for many years was teaching a course in audience development. This semester, and you can imagine why, over the summer, we created a new course in digital producing, and that was offered this semester. And that has been quite a challenge for Rachel Sussman to teach, because digital producing and theater in the digital realm has been changing literally from week to week. So that's something where she set her curriculum at the beginning of the semester and was tweaking it, as well as the guests she was bringing into class from week to week in response to new techniques that people were trying, new platforms that were coming available for digital and streaming of theater. And Tori, do you want to say something about your new class?
Yeah, this is a class that I'm teaching actually with, it grew out of conversations that Christian Parker, who is a professor in the dramaturgy program, and I have been having about what are the challenges of creating theater, primarily in the not-for-profit sector, but I think the issues come across both ways, really looking at what in our institute, there's a lot of conversation about what's working, what's not working, but there's not a lot of conversation about how do we build the theaters we want, and how do we take really practical skills and align them with some of the aspirations that people are expressing, whether it's about artist compensation, community engagement, figuring out how to have a theater that can have lower ticket prices so it can have broader audiences. How do you deal with diversifying the audience and the artistic team and the staff? What should the board structures look like going forward? What is the role of foundation giving versus individual giving? And so Christian and Jeremy Blocker, who is another faculty member in the management and producing program and is also the managing director at New York Theater Workshop, we are constructing a course that will look at how if you create an organization or an institution, you have first and foremost, we talk a lot about mission, but mission is a reflection of what your values as an organization are, and then figure out what those values are and how do you create a theater that can reflect those values and implement those values. And I think what we're going to end up doing is we'll come up with probably 3 different models, looking at how those models have evolved historically, and then saying, okay, if you have these 3 different kinds of theaters, how do the various things that you've already studied, whether it's audience development, it's marketing, it's fundraising, it's understanding what EDI issues are, how do you take those things? How do you have to implement those strategies to make the theater you want? So that's what we're looking at. Stay tuned. It's a brand new course, so we'll see how it goes. But it's really, we're looking at a way to synthesize the learning that students have. It's the reason it's a second semester, second year course. Synthesize all of the learning that you've had in various places and figure out, okay, taking that, what kind of theater can you make? What kind of place can you be? Can you be an ensemble company? Do you want to do, are you a company that does devised work? Are you a company that actually wants to do classics in a kind of a subscription presentation? Do you want to do new work? Because each of those things, making that decision, there are enormous ramifications on all of these other kind of tactical things. It's getting better and better, Stephen, right? Clearer?
It is, yes. It's amazing how
well, that's where I am. It's consensus building, but we have a meeting later today, and I'm very clear where I think we're going. So we'll see.
You're having production meetings.
We're having production meetings. It's very interesting. It really is the same process.
And that's one of several classes that we offer that are actually also electives for students in other concentrations.
Yeah.
So,
which I love.
We're looking forward to having a number of students from different concentrations all together in that class with the producing students. So speaking of electives, we really encourage you to take electives as part of your time here in the program. In theory, you don't have to. In theory, we provide for you 15 credits per semester, and you could graduate with a degree with an MFA in theater management and producing by solely taking courses that are offered as part of the theater management and producing program. But
That would be a waste.
yes, what we do is we allow within the first year for you to take one elective per semester, and in the second year for you to take up to two electives per semester. And those can be from other concentrations within the theater program. They can be in the film program. I personally always recommend either one of the film producing courses, because the film program at Columbia is very much based in the world of independent film. And from my perspective, there's a lot about the making of independent film as opposed to film within the studio system that is akin to the making and distribution and marketing of theater. There is a separate arts administration program at Teachers College, which is an affiliated institution here at Columbia University. And so some of our students take courses within the arts administration program, and some of those arts administration program students take courses in the MFA program. Each semester, there's the opportunity to cross-register for classes at Columbia Business School. You are required to take at least one course at the law school, and you can consider taking others. And then, of course, really the entire university is open to you. And so if you want to take a language, we've had fairly recently a student who was really interested in urban planning, who took some courses in urban planning at the architecture school. So depending upon what your interests are, we've had a number of students who have recently been taking classes in the School of International Affairs. So depending upon your interests and what you want to explore, there are resources throughout the university.
And I think this is a place where it's important to note that, for instance, one of the things that's been happening a lot is a lot of our students, not a lot, but some of our students are really interested in looking at pushing the boundaries of the intersection of live and virtual theater, for instance, and what are those opportunities? And the school is large enough and there are enough divisions that you actually can, one of my advisees, Rafi's independent study, Stephen, this term is fascinating in terms of really crafting the ability to really dig down and explore things you want to explore that may be different than any one thing, but there are enough resources, enough people that you can pull together a pretty productive independent study, for instance, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, and Rafi's independent study is actually collaborating with a playwright.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So a little bit about sort of our foray into the international realm. One of the newest features of our program, which started in the 2019-2020 school year and was unfortunately placed on hold this year because of the pandemic, is our Columbia University Stage 1 exchange program. Stage 1 is a program for up-and-coming producers that's run by the Society of London Theatre. And they run various seminars, and they provide seed funding for various projects in the UK. And so we've started a collaboration and exchange with them, where in the fall, for 1 week, some of their best and brightest come to New York, and we've created a week's worth of programming to introduce them to theater production in America and the ways in which it's different from theater production in the UK. And then in January, during the intersession, before the start of the spring semester, our second year students go to London for a week, and where Stage 1 is our host. And we do the same thing on the UK side, on the London side. And of course, while the British students, British participants are here. They're seeing theater here in New York. We're seeing theater when we're in London. We learn about the different business practices and had the opportunity to build relationships. The world is getting smaller and smaller. The connection between theater in the US and theater in the UK is growing, and and we're a part of that. Internships. This is just another one of those slides where there's a lot to look at. I'll talk for a moment just to basically say that during the school year, during the first two years of the program, during the full-time study, students intern in and around New York City at a very, very wide variety of theaters, offices, support organizations. And in the summers, students, and in the third year, students work full-time. And that's where there's also an opportunity to leave New York City if you choose to, whether that's going somewhere relatively close, like New York Stage and Film up in Poughkeepsie at Vassar, the Williamstown Theater Festival, or to other cities, or even potentially abroad for those professional work experiences. And internships is another one of those things where we want you to be proactive, and we will also support and advise you, because we will not tell any student where they should intern. We will not hand you an internship, but we will support you in the search for internships. We will make introductions for you. We will make suggestions. We will brainstorm with you. We will call people, email people, and recommend you. But the internships come out of the students' interests. And sometimes an internship can be very strategic about setting you up for a job when you graduate or in your third year. And in other cases, internships are very strategic about giving you exposure to an area of the industry where you know you don't want to work, but where it's really, really valuable to have an experience. I went through the program. I was actually the first graduate of the JD MFA program. And when I was a student, I knew 100% that I did not want to be a press agent, and I did not want to work in public relations. But the 4 months that I spent working with a press agent was extremely valuable to sort of have an understanding of how things worked on that particular side of the industry. I've spoken a little bit about collaboration already. There's the collaboration weekend. There's various classroom projects. There's our first and second year productions that are primarily presented in the Shapiro Theater and Shapiro Studios on 115th Street. There's our third year main stage directing thesis productions and playwriting productions that are part of our Playwrights Festival. And then there's the opportunity of being involved and collaborating with fellow students in extracurricular productions on and off campus. Another big feature of the School of the Arts that our students have taken advantage of, and Rafi Rosenberg, who's somebody that we just referenced in terms of her independent study, she took advantage of this, is the Digital Storytelling Lab here in the School of the Arts, which is by virtue of its name, it's digital. It's about storytelling. It's about working and developing content in the digital space. And usually it has students from both the theater program and the film program, as well as from writing and visual arts. And they all collaborate in this digital storytelling lab, which is essentially a class that you can take in each of the 4 semesters. And where you sort of collaborate and work in that digital space to experiment with various platforms and experiment with narrative and storytelling, and the building of character, creating projects digitally. And it was actually Rafi's work in that digital storytelling lab. Well, she actually came into the program with an interest in the digital and online realm, and how to move theater into that realm. She then participated in the digital storytelling lab, and that then evolved into her independent study. Manhattanville. Manhattanville is Columbia's newest and I guess expanded campus. The School of the Arts is a big part of Manhattanville. We have a new building there. It's the Lenfest Center of the Arts, which opened in the fall of 2017. And that arrow points to the arts building, which is next to the humongous science building, just to the right. The Lenfest Center has one floor that is a film screening room, one floor that is a flexible theater space, one floor that is an art gallery, and then on the top level, a flexible space that can be used for special events, for readings, for all kinds of occasions. And we also very secretly have a rehearsal space in the basement that's primarily used for rehearsal of thesis productions. So we're up on what is essentially 126th Street there, just off of Broadway, and then slightly up Broadway at 132nd, 133rd Street is the Nash building, where we have various classrooms and rehearsal studios as well. So we do, the theater program is spread out. While we're based in Dodge Hall at 116th and Broadway, we are spread out from 115th to 132nd Street. We've talked a little bit about the thesis already. You work on it in your third year. We don't just throw you into the deep end. A lot about the spring semester of the second year. My creative producing class in particular is about starting the research process and beginning to craft your argument, your topic area, your argument, and your outline, with the goal being that by the time you hit the end of classes in the second year, almost everyone is ready to move into the research, the full-blown research phase, which then leads fairly quickly into the fall and the writing phase of the thesis. You usually go through 2 or 3 drafts of your thesis. You work with both a faculty advisor and usually some outside advisor with special expertise in your topic area. And essentially, this is a position paper where you make an argument for change in the industry, or for recognizing that something in the industry isn't quite right, or isn't as it seems to be, or isn't working properly.
Or you build a case study for something you want to do. Right.
And usually it's a combination of some real hardcore research along with interviews. Sometimes there's surveys and data analysis. Again, just like the rest of the program, every thesis is very different. Our JD-MFA, which has been around since the 1980s and is our collaboration with Columbia Law School, essentially what it enables you to do is complete the JD, the law degree, and an MFA in theater management and producing in as few as 4 years. Everyone who's been through it has done it in either 4 or 5 years, but the majority have done it in 4 years. It is not a standalone program that you apply into. It is essentially, if you apply to the law school and you apply to the MFA program and are admitted to both, so you apply independently to both programs, both schools. If you're admitted to both, then you can elect to do the programs jointly. And essentially what happens is the electives of one program are fulfilled as requirements of the other program. And that way you essentially save 1 semester of law school, you save 1 semester of the MFA program, and that equals a year of savings. So you save time and you save money over and above taking the 2 degrees separately. For anybody who might be interested in the JD-MFA program, I'm the primary advisor for that program, and I encourage you to reach out to me and we can have a one-on-one discussion about some of the idiosyncrasies of that program. About 2 years ago, I felt that we needed to do more in the realm of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in collaboration with the producers of Jagged Little Pill, uh, we founded what I call, or what is now being called our Theater Accountability Project. And there are a number of different initiatives that are underway under that heading. One of which got support from the university provost through a seed grant initiative this fall, is our collaboration with the Black Theater Coalition. We started we created a weekly webinar series, and that we presented to participants from the Black Theater Coalition, or through the Black Theater Coalition, on all different aspects of the industry, with the goal being to really prepare them for entry-level positions. So in many ways, this is that weekly webinar series is a way that we are integrating with the industry. It isn't something that you would take as a student in this program, but a way that our program is intersecting with the industry and helping to try to make change in the industry. What's upcoming in spring of 2021, we're collaborating with, and we're joining the Broadway Advocacy Coalition collaboration with Columbia Law School. They started a new course called Theater for Change. It's a new seminar at Columbia Law School that was started a year ago. And we are becoming a partner in that particular seminar. It's a combination of law students, School of the Arts managers and producers, arts practitioners, and community members who come together and work together to create art that is designed to create social change. There's some other initiatives that we're currently working on, but they are not public yet, and they're not things that I can talk about at this moment, but I think some of them will be announced over the course of the spring. So Black Theater Coalition collaboration is not something that our students would be actively participating in, though it is something that our adjunct faculty and our alumni have participated in. The collaboration with the Law School and Broadway Advocacy Coalition is something that our second-year students have applied into and will be participating in. Also intersecting with the industry is our T Fellowship for Creative Producers. That is a separate standalone program. We have a number of producer mentors in the industry, and every year we select one fellow who has an opportunity to take classes alongside the MFA students, but is essentially a working professional, a working producer who is being mentored and having an opportunity to expand their knowledge base. That program was founded in 2005 with the collaboration of Theater Development Fund and inspired by Hal Prince in honor of T. Edward Hambleton, who was a producer who produced in New York City for decades and gave many actors, directors, producers, stage managers their start in the business.
He ran the Phoenix. He was at the Phoenix Theater for years. He was a force.
And this particular fellowship honors him and really focuses on the development of producers for the commercial theater. So the fellows are individuals that you have the opportunity to build relationships with. Our mentors are adjunct faculty in our program and/or guest speakers in our program. And then, as graduates from this program, you also have the opportunity to apply to the T Fellowship. One of the fellows over the year, one of our recent fellows was actually a graduate of the MFA program. Financial aid. So we offer both need-based and merit-based awards. In order to qualify for financial aid, you must fill out the applications that are available, and Julie will probably say more about that. What happens is if we admit you to the program, along with your offer of admission will be a financial package, a fellowship award, for the first 2 years in the program. And then there are also in the second year additional opportunities for employment at very favorable hourly rates. And so we have second year students who serve as faculty assistants, who work in various aspects of production on our thesis productions, or who run marketing for our student productions, who work in the office or in the dean's office. So there are those opportunities. The fellowships in particular range from $10,000 to $30,000, $10,000 to $30,000 per year, though they can exceed those amounts as well. An additional funding opportunity, thanks to the Schubert Foundation, which has been a supporter of this program since its founding, is in the third year, as long as you've done 2 qualifying internships during your time in the program, in your third year, you are paid a stipend, which helps to supplement any funding you've received, any compensation you've received for 2 of your internships during your time in the program.
I think it's really important to say here that if you think this is the program for you, if you're interested in applying, you should not make assumptions ahead of time about what financial aid might or might not be available, and as to whether or not it's feasible to imagine coming here, right? Go through the process, apply, have conversations with us. We are, as both Steve and Julie and I, we are all really mindful of the fact that it's an expensive program, that we'd like to have significantly more financial aid than we have. On the other hand, we do our damnedest to figure out how to make it feasible for anyone who's accepted and wants to come to school to come to school.
The school is continually fundraising, and our awards now are much greater than they were just a few years ago. And you never know what funding might come in, from year to year. So yes, when you look at the cost of attendance, after you've sort of scooped your jaw up off the floor, again, as Tori said, if you feel this program is right for you, don't let that stand in your
Don't let that stand in the way, okay?
Yeah.
Work with
It's
us.
important that you know that your need is not a factor into whether or not you're accepted in the program.
Yeah.
So please apply for financial aid if you need it. Do not be concerned that that may affect your decision whether or not you're admitted.
Absolutely.
Our admissions committee does not know, we don't know about your need until after we've made our admissions decisions. And then we do our darndest to find a way to get, if we've selected you, we do our darndest to try to find a way to help you attend. So people often ask us what kind of students we are looking for. Tori, what kind of students are we looking for?
There's no one simple answer to that question, but we're looking for students who are passionate about the performing arts, passionate about theater, who really want to make that they feel a calling for that, and who are, I would say, ready to challenge themselves, challenge each other, challenge assumptions, work hard, open to change.
You do not have to have an undergraduate degree in theater.
No, not at all.
We're looking for a really.
We won't hold that against you, but you don't have to have one.
I think what we're looking for is someone who's really who can be proactive about their education. We're looking for someone who's really looking to broaden their thinking, as opposed to having a very narrow view of the very, very specific and only thing that they want out of graduate school. We have students who come into the program occasionally directly out of undergraduate. We have students who come into the program after having had careers in other areas. Right now we have someone in the program who was a practicing lawyer and who came back to school because she wanted to work in theater, just for example. I would say the majority of our students have been out working in the theater probably from about 2 to 5 years, but that is not a requirement per se.
No, we really, when we're putting the class together, we're mindful of, I mean, we're very mindful of trying to have a balanced class in terms of lived experience, how long you've been out of school, what you have or haven't done in the theater. We look at all of that. So we try and make sure that no one is alone. So, but on the other hand, that the class is really a diverse group in many ways, because that's what makes it strong.
Yeah. Country, background, education,
All of it.
all of it. I think the key thing is, or one of the most important things that matters for each of you is, are you realistic about your desire for a career in the theater? And yes, we have students who go on and teach, and students who go on and even go to law school, and students who work in dance, and alumni who work in music and in film and television. But your primary motivation really should be theater, and that you have a realistic understanding of what that means in terms of the industry. So you're not just somebody who says, wow, working on the business side sounds really cool. You should then go and do it for a little while and see if it really is something that you could see yourself doing for the rest of your life, because we don't want to waste your time and your money. We want some people to come in who are really committed to the industry.
And we should say ahead of time, I mean, I think as an example of that, we have, I think every year actually, in the admissions process, there's at least one candidate to whom we say, we think you're great, we think you have great potential for this program, and we think you have to go work for a year or two. So coming back in a way to the finance piece, if we don't feel like it's, and then they do, and then they come back, and then we admit them. So that's not, I mean, it's just to follow through. But I think it's a way of saying, what's important about that is it's a way of saying that, again, relating back to the financial piece, we're mindful of the commitment that it is. So we want to make sure that if you're accepted into the program, that it's not only the right program for you, but that it's the right time for you to participate in that program.
Yeah, we think that's really crucially important.
Which is why sometimes, again, if you're someone who's just out of college, I mean, there, in any given year, we admit students who are just out of college for whom it's exactly the right time. And then there are other people for whom it isn't the right time.
And those kinds of people coming out of college are usually the ones who have run theater groups at their college. They've worked on campus in the theater. They've done an internship.
Yeah, if you've never done any theater and you're just out of college and you woke up, a bolt of lightning said to you, you wanted to be a theater producer, chances are we're going to say, go spend a little time in a theater. But we don't generally tend to have too many of those folks. So
we also, I think most people don't go through elementary school and high school thinking they want to be theater producers. The entry point for most people is acting or other creative areas, acting, maybe writing, directing, design. So we often have people who are looking to make a transition, who have been exploring more and more, working on the business side, and are making a transition from another area of the theater. The good news is we do not require the GRE. I never liked taking standardized tests. I don't really believe in them. We've never required the GRE, and we aren't going to start now. There are various options for creative materials. People often ask us, which do you prefer? The answer is whichever one is right for you. We're looking for your application to give us a sense of who you are. And so if you've had a lot of experience producing, and the shows that you've produced tell us, really speak to who you are, then share with us materials that represent what you have produced. If you do marketing and public relations and graphic design for theatrical productions, share that with us. If you have ideas about the kind of work you would like to manage and produce, write an essay about that, write an analysis. And that analysis, that theater production analysis that we ask for. Yes, it is a very, very open-ended question. There are a million different ways to answer that question. I think the one thing we would say is where we say choose a work and talk about how you would sort of manage or produce that work, choose something that actually is an existing work that we would know, as opposed to something devised or something that you may have written yourself. It should be something, some published work, so we have a reference point. The application deadline is January 5th. What happens after that is the admissions office will process all the applications, send them to us to review. We have an admissions committee made up of faculty from the program that will review the applications, and we narrow the field to a group that we will bring in to interview. I imagine the odds are we will be doing all our interviews via Zoom this year. We used to say we encourage you to interview in person. This year in person means on Zoom. So we do our interviews, and then not everyone who applies is interviewed. And then following the interviews, we usually begin making our offers by the middle of March. The interviews usually take place at the end of February, beginning of March. We make offers by the middle of March, and generally speaking, you make a decision to accept or not. If you're admitted, you make that decision by mid-April. I like to end off with alumni. There's a light at the end of the tunnel when you're in the MFA program. We're very close to our alumni, and this is just I had some screenshots sent recently of alumni who were Zooming. I actually participated in the 9th annual Holiday Secret Santa. This year it was Zoom gathering. That's this one over here. I participated in that. It's the class of 2015. They've been gathering every year since 2012. And,
I didn't know that.
Yep, every single year.
Wow.
Though they're not all in New York City, and in some years, not all of them have been able to be together. But this year, thanks to Zoom, everyone was together. And in addition to the fact that we have students from each year kind of building their cohort and their relationships and sticking together after graduation, I think the other great thing is that alumni reach out and want to engage with current students. It's sort of built, it's part of that network. It's part of what I like to call our Columbia Mafia. And there's a very, very recent photo sent to me by a current third-year student, Yu Chen, was taken in Shanghai, and she's there with two alumni from the program. And they really have embraced her as a student in the program and coming out of the program now, transitioning into the working world. And yes, you can graduate. And no, not every class gets to go to Chicago for the opening night of Hamilton, but the class of 2018 was really lucky in that way. It was just one of those experiences. You never know what's going to happen in a particular year in this program, and sort of the opportunities that just might come along because of our place in the industry.
Well, and I think the thing that's important is Robert is a professor in the program, and I think it's an indication of the fact that professors view their interaction with students in a really personal way. And I mean, I think it's maybe not a bad time to mention that, what are we looking for? One of the things I forgot to say is we're looking for people who are self-motivated and self-directed. This is a program for, we assume you're a grown-up, right? So your professors are unbelievably available to you if you choose to reach out and say, I want to talk to you, right? So it is that there are endless possibilities, but you need to be able to act on it.
Robert actually Robert and I worked together to create the Stage 1 program, since he does a lot of work with the UK. And how did this all come about? Robert said to this class, to the students, I'm going to have to cancel class on X day. We'll have to figure out a makeup time because I'm going to be in Chicago for the opening night of Hamilton.
He was the accountant on the show.
Yeah, and the student said to him, well, just take us along and we'll have class in Chicago. And he picked up the phone and he called Jeffrey Seller, the producer of the show, and one thing led to another, and everybody got a cheap flight and they got a few hotel rooms and all roomed together, and they had class in Chicago and went to the opening night of Hamilton there. So go figure. You just never know.
Because someone had enough attitude to say, take us with you.
So I'm going to stop the share and happy to open this up to questions, unless Julie, there's anything you want to say before we do that.
No, nothing more. You've pretty much covered it.
Let's see, Caroline, is it Caroline Knapp?
Yes, Caroline. Hi. I wanted to know what you guys look for in the portfolio. Like, what are some key figures that you want to see out of the work that we've done?
I think, as I mentioned, one important thing is we want the entire application, your letters, recommendation, your essays, your portfolio. We want that entire application to give us a sense of who you are. So who you are in terms of that portfolio includes what you choose to share, as well as how you choose to present it, right? So don't just pull a few different PDFs together into one document and send it along. I think probably the best, if you're creating a portfolio as opposed to the essay, I think that part of it is curating it, right? Explain to us what we're seeing, how we should look through the documents that you're providing to us. So I think that those are two sides to it, right? What's the content and how are you presenting that content? Does that help?
Yes.
Alec Hirsch.
Sure. So I'm very interested in studying rural theater and ways in which to get the performing arts to kind of communities that haven't had access to it before. I know we've talked a lot about kind of urban theater. Are there opportunities to work in that field as well?
Sure. I mean, that's the very short answer, but I think through my work at TDF, I'm involved in a variety of conversations with the National Arts Service organizations, performing arts networks, and what we would, if that's something that's of particular interest to you, I can imagine that we would probably work with you to find a summer internship where you were working not in New York, but you were working with some organization that's committed to broadening access to a wide-ranging group of communities. It might also be interesting. I would imagine that if you were my advisee, I would encourage you to say, let's look at some public policy classes in some other schools of the university where you would be able to look at kind of models of funding for rural or underserved communities. So I think there would be lots of opportunities, and I think it's actually it's an area that gets talked about more and more. And I actually personally think it's really important, because I think the lack of access to the arts in rural communities is, I think the arts are where, I think theater is storytelling, and I think the lack of access to arts is the lack of access to storytelling. And I think the lack of understanding other people's stories leads to all sorts of challenges. One of my advisees now is from a very rural community in Washington State. And he's channeled, I think the way he's channeled his background is really looking at training programs, and how, for him, one of his passions is how do people like me, coming from a tiny town in eastern Washington State, figure out how to have access to the theater? How do I have access to training? So I think the answer is yes. There's all sorts of ways that we could work with that and would work with that.
I also think that one of the big opportunities coming out of this shutdown is the sort of expanded role of digital theater and ways that, you know, if you have an internet connection, while it might not necessarily be live and in person, or not necessarily in person, there are ways that we can now reach communities and be more accessible in ways that we never have.
And
before.
beyond that, this is something that is brand new to me. There was an article in the paper yesterday that in rural Michigan, right, the only way kids can do remote learning is they're actually having to put them on the school bus to take them to a facility that has internet access so they can do remote learning. And so I think, Stephen, something that's really interesting to think about in rural communities is coming together to watch something digitally, right? Which when people can be in a room, right now you can't be in a room together, but when you can be in a room together, there's going to be a whole further iteration of what digital access means, which I've just begun to think about when I read about those kids.
I think Jonathan and then Gabriella.
Yeah, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious if you could kind of talk a little bit more about, this is a broad question, but the classwork and kind of group projects, just kind of an overview of what those are for a lot of these classes.
It really varies widely from class to class. I can speak about my class in particular. In the first year, the students do what I call a service mapping project, where they map customer service touch points and then work together in teams to imagine ways that we could be improving various aspects of the customer service experience in theater. So that's one thing in my class, just for example.
Yeah, my class is a combination of reading, discussion, 3 essays. I teach marketing and audience development. And I don't know if that's helpful. I think the workload in Stephen's class, out of class, is a little heavier than the workload in my class. It's kind of everybody's different in terms of how we.
Were you talking specifically about were you talking more about just sort of workload from class to class and requirements, or were you thinking more about how do people work together in classes?
Yeah, more than that. I was just curious kind of what types of projects students are doing, if it's stuff that's, you know, very hands-on, or if it's mostly written work, that kind of thing.
Oh, it varies dramatically from class to class.
Yeah, mine is not hands-on. Mine is mostly individual work, but there are other classes where it's very collaborative. And
the digital theater class, for example, students were working together or were literally creating work for the end of the semester that they used different platforms for, and had an editor and actually still at this moment, they're just finishing up, have an editor involved with them to sort of help them put it all together. So it ranges from literally in that digital theater course to creating work, to working on projects together, to developing sort of a fictional theater and structures for that theater. So it's such a wide range. Every class is very different in terms of the requirements and the opportunities there. Gabriella.
Hi, I have 2 questions if I'm allowed to ask both. But so my first question was, what kind of questions do you ask in the interview? Like, what should we be expecting / prepared for?
Well, then it really wouldn't be a surprise at all. And, you know,
we work for it to be not intimidating. We work for it to be pleasant and fun. We want to it's an opportunity to get to know you and flesh out what's in the application. And I'm not being coy. It depends so much about what's in your application, right? I mean, really, it's about 20 minutes usually. And, you know, if we are interviewing 20 people, it's probably kind of 20 different interviews, other than the obvious, put in your own words why the program is, why you want to do this, but you're going to have said that in your essay. So it's more likely to be given X, Y, or Z, and I can't fill in the blank till I read your application. Why is this particularly interesting or exciting to you? It's really to put and it's very much an opportunity for you to ask further questions of us, because it's not just me and Stephen. It'll be Stephen, me, and probably 2 or 3 other folks. So it gives you a chance to see us. Is that
That
fair?
was really helpful.
Great?
And I would say, yeah, the individual aspect of the program starts in the interview. And there are interviews where we wind up discussing some aspect of theater and just have a conversation for 15, 20 minutes. So
Right.
you just never know what's going to sort of, how the conversation is going to go. And it really does come out of who you are and what you've presented to us in many ways.
Stephen,
Or
Aaron,
what we think you're hiding.
Sorry?
Or what we think you're hiding.
Oh.
Stephen, I was just going to tell you, Erin Thompson has a question, but she is not able to figure out how to raise their hand. So.
Oh, okay.
And Adam, and we also have a question from Adam in the chat room too.
Okay. Gabrielle, you had a second question, or?
I did, yeah. My question was, how many of your students are employed by graduation or like a year after?
Well, this year is an anomaly, so I really can't speak to this year. But I would say everyone who wants to be employed is always employed. There's some individual, I can't think of someone who wanted to be working who couldn't get a job, except for this really weird time we're in right now, admittedly. So there are some individuals who choose not to have a job because they have projects that they're working on. So they might be doing various part-time things to pay the bills while they're actually working on starting a company or pushing their projects forward. But generally speaking, if you want a job, you wind up getting a job. At least that's been the history up until now. Erin.
Hello. I was curious about like if you guys kind of cover the relationship of like artistic director to executive manager or director of a theater, because I'm kind of like I come from a directing background, and I'm really curious about like, and that kind of goes in the program, like if you've ever had people even take directing classes or like where that crossover is. Yeah.
So we've had a number of students come in from sort of the directing track on a path to artistic directing or producing directing. And so I think this provides a pathway for that, at least for the type of artistic director who really wants to understand the producing and business aspects of that role, especially. There are courses, that we would probably recommend for someone like that in the dramaturgy program, in the directing program. Each concentration, producing included, has particular courses that are closed to students from other concentrations and are just specifically for the cohort, and that goes for directing as well. And then there are other courses that are opened up.
Right,
So,
but if you want, so everything Stephen said, if you want conservatory training as a director, it's not gonna, you won't get to it through this program. But if you want, I think we have a variety of folks over the years who have been interested in being artistic directors who have come through this program as opposed to a conservatory training program.
And who are now artistic directors or producing directors.
Or associate, right. So
or
it's
associate artistic
directors. I mean, Andy Donald comes to mind at ACT.
Yeah,
so
Donald, Eric Louie.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks.
Prime examples.
Adam's question, Stephen, in the chat room, in the chat about, does the program have to be done in 3 years, or can we take lesser course loads due to work/parenting/life?
Julie can weigh in on this, but I believe that really the only option is full-time.
Right.
That is correct. It's a full-time program. It's only 2 years of full-time coursework. However, your third year, many of the students are working full-time and or doing internships. But yes, the only exception to the full-time rule is if you are a Columbia employee. Otherwise, it has to be full-time.
That said, I mean, that's a real life choice, and I don't want to diminish that. We have had students, I think most years, we often have students who are parents. I think I can say that in every one of those instances, the partner is an active parenting participant. I think it would be misleading to suggest that kind of in hours of the week you could co-parent as someone who has kids. But that said, there's a lot of, when I've had advisees who have kids, their internship structure is often different because they may want to concentrate an internship in the summer, for instance, because they don't have the ability, between school and their parenting responsibilities, they don't have the time to put an internship in during the year. So, I mean, we are sympathetic to those choices or those issues, but it would be, as Julie said, it's a full-time program. And certainly in terms of family, it is a family effort when you're going to graduate school with kids.
Yeah, but we have absolutely had parents with young children, babies and young children, come through the program and be successful in the program. Erin, I just want to make sure, did we completely answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Victoria.
Hi there. Regarding the application, I was wondering how you guys in admissions differentiate between like a press and publicity portfolio versus a producing and management portfolio, and whether those are distinct or something that can have overlap.
They could absolutely have overlap. So you could be a producer who has also developed press and marketing materials for your show, right? So sometimes especially when we're working in sort of early stages or lower budget, we wear so many different hats as managers and producers. So if there are projects where you've done the budgets and the contracts and the press release and the graphic design and everything else yourself, absolutely feel free to combine those.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Gabriella, and I think you also asked a question. Yes, 15 to 20 hours of class per week. Yeah, it kind of depends. Some semester, it depends upon whether you're doing electives or not. So I think there's kind of a range usually from maybe 12 to 15, but it can go up from there, especially.
So I answered that wrong, sorry.
Yeah.
I have another question though, which is mostly for Julie. My question is like for housing and stuff. Like I know that it's offered for graduates, and I wanted to know, one, if that's considered part of the financial aid process, whether everyone who applies has access to it, and how that kind of looks like.
Okay, so there is graduate student housing. It's apartment style housing, so it's not in dorms. It feels like just a regular New York City apartment. It depends on the year. So this year, pretty much anyone who wanted housing could get it, because we had a lot of students who chose, since most of our classes were remote, we had a lot of students who chose not to come to New York in September. In a regular year, I would say probably 30 to 40% of our students who apply for housing can get it, with a caveat. Number one, it is not by any stretch the cheapest housing that you can find in New York. So many students, even when they're offered Columbia housing, decide instead that they can do much better if they live off campus. And we have students who live all over the city. We have students in New Jersey, we have students Queens, Brooklyn, definitely in the Bronx, particularly in Washington and Inwood. We have a lot of students who live there. You can get a lot more for your money if you're not in Columbia housing. So that's one thing. In a normal year, when we have limited housing, the way that it tends to be given out, and this is, it varies, but it tends to be given out to students who are coming from the furthest away. So if you're an international student, you have a much better chance of getting a housing allocation than if you're coming from Brooklyn. So just something to keep in mind. That being said, if you were coming from Brooklyn this year and you wanted Columbia housing, you could certainly get it. So it depends on the year, but just keep in mind that even if you are offered Columbia housing, you don't have to take it. You'll be offered a unit and you'll be given the price, and then you can decide whether or not you want it. So it's certainly worth it to apply for housing. But if you're trying to save money, you can definitely find cheaper places.
And in answer to Andrew, who put a question in the chat, yes, if you're coming from a stage or production management background, your portfolio can include some of those materials as well.
Stephen, I'm going to have to demonstrate the fact that adjunct faculty have real life jobs as well as their real life job teaching. And I'm going to have to go to, I have an 11 o'clock meeting that I'm now 7 minutes late for. So if that's okay, it's not anything anyone said. I'm just off and running. I will put my email in the chat room. So, and I'm at my computer most days. I'm not doing not out and about too much. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to email me as well as anyone else. and here's a happy new year to all of you. And I'll talk to you later, Stephen.
Okay, thank you, Tori.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
And I'm putting my email in the chat as well, though if you're resourceful, which you should be, if you want to be a manager or producer, you can easily find my contact information by poking around the Columbia website, but there it is in the chat as well. I'm certainly happy to hear from any of you who want to follow up on anything that we've said today or have additional questions. Before we go, any additional or final questions? I have another couple minutes. Let's see, Victoria.
Hi, yes, I'm also Victoria or Tori Lynn.
Ah.
I'm curious what adjustments the program has had to make regarding the requirements which usually call for in-person collaboration, like the theater management, producing, and internship requirements. How are these currently being met under the COVID restrictions?
Primarily, they've been deferred, and we are currently planning to start ramping back up in the later spring. So some of that's going to be happening. Some students have actually chosen to create digital works to fulfill some of these requirements, and we have some students who are participating in that. But part of what we're doing is actually consolidating a lot of what would have happened this year into next year's programming. So it's going to be a very, very packed year, especially for our production team, because we're going to be turning things around from show to show, pretty much nonstop all the way through. But we stopped for a while, right? And now we've been planning and replanning and replanning the ramp up, as so many industries have done.
Thank you.
Yep. I'm just looking at one quick thing in the chat. Is it at all possible for a student to matriculate as a virtual student from abroad? During this shutdown, we have allowed people to participate remotely. There has not been a conversation about whether we would allow that to happen once everything is back up and running in person. A really important part of this program for us is the ability to be in the same room, the ability to go around town together, the ability to see theater together. And that is certainly, that aspect of the MFA program would be compromised and is currently compromised by not being able to be in the same room together. It really wouldn't be the same program. There might be a different form of program, but it wouldn't be the program that we've created and that we've been running if we couldn't actually at some point be in the same room together. If we're unable to commit to the full 3 years, could we audit some courses virtually? So you would only have to commit to 2 years. That third year, when you're writing your thesis and you're working, that can be done from anywhere in the world. And we have had students working and writing their thesis and doing their research all over the world. The summers can be elsewhere. So really what we're talking about, as far as the in-person component, where we would really love to have you here, that's 14 weeks per semester for 4 semesters. That's really the key in-person component. Pandemic protocols for in-person classes. Every class, many of our classes are completely remote. Those classes that have an in-person option also have had a remote option this year. And for anybody who's there in person, we're wearing masks, we're physically distanced, and we have some technology available that's allowing us to sort of have everybody on Zoom together, including those who are in the room as well as those who are online. I run my own small production company abroad. Would I be able to consider those productions as internships? The goal with the internship is that you are working with and learning from other people, that you are expanding your network, that you are expanding your sort of mindset and your experience. So just working for yourself on your own projects, that really wouldn't fulfill the requirement of an internship. working on your own project, collaborating with a more experienced person, co-producing with a more experienced person, that might be a little bit different. So what I would say is, just off the bat, not really, but there are sort of aspects of that question that could be explored in more detail. And we have had students who have had their own projects where there is a form of sort of there's a mentorship aspect as part of it, a partnership process as part of it, where we felt that it has fulfilled the requirements. That would kind of be an exception. If you run your own theater production company in summers, can internships be strictly during the year? Absolutely. Yes. There's no requirement that you do a summer internship per se. The requirement is that you do 3 internships. The only issue is that there are some types of internships that you can only do full-time. Certain companies might only take full-time interns. If that's the case, then you're either choosing not to have those kinds of experiences, or, because normally people would do that in the summers or during the 3rd year. How long are typical internships? Generally speaking, a semester or a summer in length. William.
Is it common for students to do more than 3 internships?
Yes. Every other concentration that has an internship requirement is 2, actually. Our requirement used to be 2. Everyone did more than 2. There wasn't a single person going through the program that didn't do at least 3. And so, to benefit the international students, we expanded the requirement for producing internships to 3, because that meant they were then, as part of their visa situation, they could do 3 internships. But most students do more than that. And yeah, absolutely, totally fine. If you literally did a different internship and you hit the ground running in the fall semester of your 1st year, you could do somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 or 8 different internships or work experiences over your time in the program. Devin.
Hi, Stephen. This question relates back to the length of the internships. Is there a total number of hours you have to have completed in order to consider that internship complete by any standards?
Technically, if you wanted it to count toward that Schubert stipend, it would be at least 120 hours, which for a management and producing internship is kind of a no-brainer, right? That's kind of, there's no question, right? Unless you were kind of helping to work on somebody's opening night or working for 3 or 4 days, but I wouldn't consider that a real full-blown internship anyway. Yeah. So even something that's really smaller scale and project oriented would probably be at least 120 hours for it to count as, a real full-blown internship. Yeah, but generally speaking, they last for the bulk, if not an entire semester. There are some internships where you might start part-time during the spring semester and then expand to be full-time in the summer at the same company. Or you might, what I did when I was a student and what happens with some people, one of my internships when I was a student, I was working full-time during the summer at Jujamcyn Theaters, and then segued into part-time through the fall semester of that next year. So there's lots of flexibility, highly individualized. Gabriella, back to you.
Thanks for answering so many of my questions. I'm not sure if you guys are able to answer this one, but do you know how, I know you guys are talking about financial aid and, merit-based and need-based, but I was curious, do you know how your students are paying for their rent, how they're making money to, live off of while they're at school, not just, money for their tuition?
I can take that a little bit. So there's really 2 ways. There are some students who have part-time jobs that, some of the internships will pay you, some of them don't. But there are students that have jobs that either they had before they came to Columbia that they can still continue, or they find jobs when they get there. Both jobs within the Columbia community and outside. So that's one way to make some money. And the other way is through loans. So domestic and permanent residence students can apply for loans. And a lot of times the loans that you get, and in many cases can go towards your living expenses. You can actually get loans up to the cost of attendance. So if you need loans for food or for transportation or for, you know, your cell phone bill, that type of thing, as an enrolled student, you can actually get loans to help cover those expenses. So those are really the two ways, other than whatever savings you may have built up in advance of grad school.
Thank you.
Devin, your question about writing a play analysis on a new play we personally helped develop. So as I mentioned before, I wouldn't say no, but I would say it is highly preferred that it's some play that we might either be familiar with or we could look up, something that's published, something that's had some sort of production already, so we can better assess what you've written. I wouldn't say that's a hard and fast requirement. And if you felt really strongly that your best essay was about a work that you helped create that isn't actually sort of out there in the world yet, I would say go for it. But generally speaking, it's helpful if we have if we can, even if we haven't read the play or seen the play ourselves, that we can learn something about it and know something about it, and then that helps put into perspective what you've written about it. It's hard to sort of assess what you're saying about a particular work if there's no way that we can read it or see it or know about it or learn more about it. Does that make sense? Okay, last question, William.
In the second year of the program, students are able to do like student employment options. Would those typically consume the time that students would spend on internships, or have students been able to do both student employment through Columbia and work internships concurrently?
So right now there's a second year student named Amy Eingold. Some of you may have met her. She helped organize, was participating in a Q&A info session earlier this year. She will probably be one of the people organizing a Q&A that we do in and around the interviews in February or March. So Amy's a second year student. Her second year job happens to be as my faculty assistant. She spends about 10 hours a week doing that. And she is also interning at Thompson Turner Productions, which is a Broadway general management company. She's been doing that all semester long. So that's my best answer to your question. You can do both. When I was a student, I was in class, I worked on campus at Miller Theater, and I interned at the same time. So it's all about what each individual can manage, right? What can you handle as a human being? And there's no right or wrong about that. It's just about what's right for you. And it's about also how you allocate among, if you take full advantage of 18 credits per semester and maybe even audit an additional class on top of that, and are working in 5 productions on campus over the course of the semester, that's going to limit your ability to maybe intern or to work part-time, right? But so it's all about how each individual student is achieving that balance and what your priorities are. Flexibility and individualized. That's sort of the name of the game.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. These were amazing questions. We've been doing, I credit the admissions department at Columbia for teaching me how to use Zoom before it was a thing, because we've been doing these Zoom webinars for a few years now. And I got to say, and I think it's, because we've all been living on Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all those other things for a while now, the level of interactivity and sort of this back and forth and all the questions, it's really been wonderful. And it's much more than we've been used to in prior years. So I really appreciated all the questions and sort of having everybody unmute and sort of jump in here. So, so this was great. Again, you have my email if you want to reach out. There are students who would be happy to talk to you as part of the admissions process as well. So feel free to reach out, and everybody, happy holidays, happy new year. I look forward to reading a lot of your applications and to seeing you in interviews.